Our speaker today is Matt Williamson. Matt's the founder and CEO of a company here in town called Clevyr. I'm going to let him tell you way more about that. I've had the opportunity to know him for a couple of years, so I know a little bit of the story. And like all of our speakers, there's lots of twists and turns and maybe some accidents. And what I'd encourage you to pay attention to is, again, how do you take a couple things from that story and that journey and maybe apply it to your own world. So can we give Matt a quick OKPSA welcome? He's getting his audio video all set up here, and if you're wondering, one of the member benefits is that you can have access to all of the recordings, both audio and video, of all the speakers, as long as we've had them, and we've been doing that almost since the beginning. So, Matt, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, guys, girls. So, I'll preface this with I'm the worst salesperson in the room, by far. I'm not a salesperson. I'll start there. In fact, I've had bosses tell me I'm not a salesperson, so that's the truth. So I started Clevyr in 2009, but before that, I was super cute. So I'm a local Oklahoma guy, grew up in Choctaw, just an average life out there, you know, shooting BB guns and playing in pastures. And I got lucky, though. My dad was a developer. So from the age of 0, I was the guy sitting on knees watching punch cards and magnetic tape roll by, and I kind of just grew up in dark rooms with green lights blinking. So when you grow up in Choctaw, you do a lot of reading. I read a lot of cyberpunk, and so I naturally assumed that anything in sci-fi was real, and it is. If you just work really hard, it can be, right? Star Trek's the thing. That guy's so damn cute, though. So that's a horrible picture, and Mackenzie's at fault. Right after the high school time, I decided to join the Marine Corps because of Tom Clancy. And I don't recommend joining the military because you read books. It is not the same experience. He's a great author. You know, you watch and read The Hunt for Red October, and next thing you know, you're taking orders from people and running around with guns, but that's what happened. So we'll jump into like real stuff now. So I got my degree in journalism, and as I was finishing that degree in 1995, I was working for the state's first ISP called IONET. And if you're really old and you have you had an IONET account, that's awesome. If you remember that day of April 19th, 1995, you know what happened. The bombing happened right down the street. And I happened to have just met the lady standing right beside me there at school. Her name was Sue Hale. And Sue ran the Oklahoman at that time. She was the editor-in-chief. So I called her that afternoon, and I said, hey, this is weird, but give me your slick. And she said, for what? And I just said, I'm going to put it online. And of course, it's 1995, and she thought that was dumb. And it was, but. So we take that, we put the slick online, and we make it ionet.net/the Oklahoman. And so we started this paper. About 6-8 months later, she hires me to come start News OK, and that was the group that started it. Most of them are still alive. It was a long time ago. But it was like an MBA, right, in trying to figure out what to do and what not to do, in technology especially. So from there, I got bored. I get bored really easily. That's why I had to like start my own company probably. I got bored at News OK, so I had to go to a couple others. Went to a Christian ISP, which was a lot of fun. We just played games, to be honest. We got a lot of funding. We didn't get a lot of customers. We played a lot of games, I'll be honest. But I left there and I went to American Fidelity. And when American Fidelity hired me, it was a strange interview. They interviewed me and they said, how subversive are you? I thought, I'm really subversive. That was weird, but it was Bill Cameron asking how subversive I was, and what he said is, he said, listen, someone's gonna start a company to defeat me in a garage with a bunch of guys. I'm just gonna do it myself. I thought, it's great, let's do that thing. So when you're in a great big building and a great big organization and everyone wears suits and ties and they may have been there for 60 years and you're running around in shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops, you don't make a lot of friends. They don't like that. They don't like that at all. So actually at News OK, I stopped wearing a suit. because I just started not wearing clothes to work almost one day. Shorts and flip-flops, and it worked out okay. American Fidelity was it was one of those experiences where every day you go to work and you stay there until you don't. You know, like just some days you just kind of look out and you go, wow, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, I guess I should run home and take a shower. Because we were just so engrossed in what we were doing. And that guy was still dumb enough to think that you just kept working until it was done, which was the way it worked for us. When our 3 years was up and we'd done what we had to do for American Fidelity, I went on and I went to a place called Advanced Financial Solutions. And it was probably the best software company for tech, or for fintech in the nation at that point. It was little, about 100 of us. And then when I left, there was a little over 500 local, thousands national. But I was doing the same thing there. We were kind of the R&D firm inside of the company, trying to defeat our own software. Our job was to make take the software that was good, make it better, break it 100 times, fix it 100 times, keep going, right? So that's where I met this guy named Gary Nelson. He was my boss at AFS. He's an amazing man. And on my interview actually with him, he said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, I like your desk. And the guy that I was really going to go to work for was the director of marketing, and he about pooped himself. He thought that was the worst thing he'd ever heard. He apologized. But I got lucky because Gary decided, all right, smart ass, you're the new CEO. So for about 5 years, everything he did, he called me into it, and I had to have a discussion about why you do that, and why the budget looks like this, why you hire and fire, why the technology has to do this. It was like an MBA again. I loved it. So we got acquired, and if you've ever been through getting acquired, it's brutal. It doesn't matter. Like there could be the best intentions on the planet, I think, but no acquiring company ever keeps the culture. I just don't think it happens. Culture's big for me. So I walked out of that place and went to Century Martial Arts in Midwest City. Any of you familiar with that? It's an amazing company. Mike Dillard's built this thing from his garage to this giant corporation. And it was the only place that I'd been since the Marine Corps that actively encouraged me to pick people up and throw them down, which was amazing. We actually had judo mats in all the offices, and we got to play around. But it wasn't technology, right? It was martial arts, which I love, but it wasn't really technology. I was leading their technology, but it was way different. In a company that doesn't do technology, I got really upset. I wanted to do more, and I kept pushing, and I kept getting yelled at. And so then Gary says, well, come back to work for me. I'm starting a new company. Fantastic. Actually, I'll tell this story. He doesn't like it if I tell him the story probably, but I'm meeting him at a coffee shop. He says, take out a piece of paper, write out your salary. Let me see it. I said, cool. I wrote out the salary, folded it over, very cryptic, slid it across. He looked at it, he shook his head, he scratched it out, and I thought, damn, I just lost money, And instead, he increased it by a lot, which was amazing, and he slid it back over. Obviously, I'm going to go back to work for that guy. That's late 2008. If you're familiar with time, late 2008 sucked for financial industries. Early 2009, he calls me one morning and he says, hey, I'm going to lay everybody off. I said, yes, sir. I will get working right now to lay everybody off. And he said, you're not listening. And I said, I heard you. We will lay everybody off today. And he said, start with you. And I thought, no. Actually, I said on the phone, it was early. It was like 6:45. I said, well, no. Remember, I've got a wife. I've got 4 little kids. We got these 2 cars. We got a house. This is not a good idea. And he said, well, today you start your company. I thought, well, that's really stupid. So that day we started Clevyr. And you're supposed to have a business plan and funding and who you're going to hire and who your next customer is. I didn't do any of that. I've actually never done any of that. That was also not the right way to run a business, but here we are 10 years later. So in 2009, that's probably 2010, but whatever. In 2009, I start Clevyr, and have you seen that scene in Jerry Maguire where he starts his company and everybody walks out with him? Well, not everybody, but she does, right? I did that at a company here in town where I'd been officing. I just said, I'm I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to start Clevyr. And my two partners, who I knew really well and I'd worked with previously, one at Century and one at AFS, said, cool, we're in. They probably still regret it, but Jason's our CTO, Tim's our CPO, product officer. And so that was 3 of us in 2009. There's 25 today. 25, it's like 25 individuals, but there's families and there's people and ancillary friends and all this culture and community that you build around you that maybe not consciously you're building, but it just kind of happens sometimes correctly. And along the way you make hires that are not great and you're still friends with them after they separate from you if you're lucky, and if not, it is what it is. But so today, we're just up the street here, and we're on 9th and Class, and that's about half the crew. After we posted that we were going to take this picture, and then Tim took the picture, one of our guys goes, I was in the garage making a thing for a client, and he didn't even know to come in, but the rest of the people aren't out in the office every day. But what we do every day is take someone's I can't and turn it into an I can, which is really powerful for them. We were on the phone this morning with a client out of Wichita, and he said probably 5 times, there's no way this is going to happen, because he knows what it's like to work with his internal crew. And he's right, there's no way it's going to happen internally. But these people are so smart, it's scary, some of them. One of our guys, who's not in that picture, one of our guys over the Christmas break built a platform in AI that the DoD had asked us to consider. And when over the Christmas break he built this thing and proved it could be done, and actually said, listen, let's just call the TPOC the technical person to contact. We explained it to the TPOC, and the TPOC said, we can't use you. We asked you to think about it. We wanted you to write a paper. We wanted you to ask for permission. We wanted you to get funding for 6 months, and if you could think about it and write this great paper, we would talk to you about funding you for 3 years to figure it out. He'd figured it out over the holiday weekend, and they didn't like that at all, so don't work with the DoD sometimes, I guess is what I'm saying there. It is what it is, right? Right. So my philosophy as a CEO is just to let people lead, because you've hired them and they're going to do something and they're going to do it their way. It might not be your way, and trust me, it's almost never my way, but that's better. They're smarter than I am anyway. I mean, on the whole, technology changes so rapidly that my job now kind of is just to keep reading technology and keep trying to figure the new thing out and keep asking the sci-fi question. And it makes our CTO crazy. He doesn't like it when I send him a text at 9:30 at night that says, I got this idea. He won't even read receipt. He won't reply to me, anything. And the next day he'll walk in and say, okay, I read that thing. Here's what we're going to do. But what we're doing every day is playing, right? I mean, we get to play every day, all day for a living, and people pay us to do that, which is an honor. I mean, it's so much fun. The thing that I love about Clevyr and what we do there, I mean, that's Angel, my wife. She's right over there. She works with us. We've built this team of people who, even when you ask them something really hard and they say it's not going to happen, because they say it all the time too. We had a client who we mistakenly heard him say, make me a video editing platform. And so we made him a video editing platform, and he was like, that's great. That's not exactly what I needed. That's really more advanced than I was really looking for, but we built it really quickly, and the guy who built it internally sat in my office and said, that's never going to happen. Stop selling this. We can't do this thing. He lives in a tent in our warehouse, which is funny, but not really lives, but he offices out there. Some of you have seen the tent. It's for real. Brian's seen it. He goes away, and literally the next morning he walks in and he goes, hey, I did that thing. And I said, but you said it can't be done. And he said, yeah, that's just what I tell you. So, when you hire those people who are random and strange, and He's a physicist, actually. He's one of our best developers, but he's a physicist. No formal training in computer science at all. It's just interesting to watch them. I guess what's fun is you watch them go 30 generations of trying to figure something out software-wise in moments, right? They get that faraway stare, that kind of 10,000-foot stare where you're not sure if they've had a mental lapse or if they've had a genius moment, and it's probably the same thing. But then they come back to you and they say, here's how we're doing it. And it's like poetry, man. It's just music. Oh, I can't go to you already. That's just way too fast, right? So let's do this. I want to bring up Mike for a little bit because it's going to give you guys a lot more context, and then I'll come back up. So Mike's our VP of Sales.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh, it's on.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh, thanks. So Matt had this up here for our relationship because we're the yin and the yang to one another. Actually, he told me to say the yun and the yang, but I didn't like that. So Matt says he's not a good salesperson, which is 100% accurate, but he's a masterful storyteller, which is exactly what he does so well that captivates so many people and why he is the perfect CEO for the company and why the company's done such amazing things. And so Matt's told the first half of the how story, which is really how he runs Clevyr as the CEO and how he built it and how it came to be. And so I'm going to tell the second part of that how story, which is how do you sell custom software development? Because it's pretty hard to sell custom software development. And one of the problems is that a lot of people have what's called the Sunday to Monday problem. Has anybody heard the Sunday to Monday problem before? The Sunday to Monday problem is that the software that you use on Sunday in your personal lives is better, more simple, and faster than the software used on Monday in your work life. So that your enterprise software, despite, no matter the size of your company, if you're billions in revenue or tens or hundreds of million in revenue, you're oftentimes working with software that's just inefficient and it doesn't work well. It's the classic example at this point of the Sunday to Monday problem is the difference between using Uber in your personal life, which I'm sure most of us have used Uber or Lyft. Went to New York City recently. I got out of the airport. I opened up Uber and knew exactly where I was, 2 or 3 clicks. I had a cab come pick me up, took me where I was going. It was a piece of cake. Well, a lot of the enterprises that we work with, they're stuck back here. Despite the technology like Uber existing, when they get out of the airport at New York, they're standing on the curb, sucking down smog in the rain, trying to hail that cab, right? And there's new technologies available, but they're doing things the same way that they've been doing them for 25 years or longer. So one of the first questions that we ask folks who come into our office that we talk about custom development with is, where are you from that scale of Uber to standing in the rain trying to hail a cab? And sometimes people are really honest and they know exactly where they are. Sometimes people are a little too hard on themselves. We had one current client who said, well, we're back on a stagecoach, right? It wasn't true. They were doing pretty well. And then you have some people who are a little too optimistic about where their technology is. Oh, we are on the cutting edge. We're on the bleeding edge. Literally, this IT director said that to us. The CEO called us later of that company and said, we are not on the cutting edge, which is why you guys were in our office and we were having a meeting. And so oftentimes, software decisions, even though they're highly technical, they're also extremely emotional decisions. And that's one of the reasons custom development and selling custom development is so hard, because you're dealing with really, really big price points. You're dealing with things that most really intelligent business leaders actually don't know a whole lot about and are kind of embarrassed that they don't know more about, or they've already invested a lot of money and they haven't got where they needed to go. So all of these big, complex enterprise sales, so our sales cycle is pretty long, so we're 6, 12 months, sometimes longer for really big projects. They take a long time, but when we can get in and work through those emotional issues and use a lot of the communication skills that Mike teaches in Sandler, and so we try to apply a lot of that in how we go out and talk to our customers, we can get in there and build solutions for our clients that are fast, that are fun, that are elegant, and that are just plain easy to use. And so if you come to our office, if you want to learn more, we'll do like the full spiel and you can see a bunch of different examples, but just kind of highlighting like what does that mean, custom development? Basically means any software that you need that you can't find commercially available off the shelf. That's stuff that we can build for you. If you need 7 different applications to talk together and run a new dashboard, we can do stuff like that. If you need a mobile app, we can do that. If you need a large, complex enterprise website or web application, we can build stuff like that. We've built CRMs before, we built client portals, all those things, including work in augmented and virtual reality and artificial intelligence. So a whole wide variety. When you've got a team of about 25 people, some of them certifiable geniuses, and 10 years of experience, there's nothing that we've found that we can't actually do. Probably just a couple more things that I'll say really quickly is that one of the things that we spent a lot of time the last year figuring out how to communicate and how to manage expectations around is the customer journey when you're building new software. So most of the clients that we're working with are trying to build an application from scratch, brand new application from scratch. They've identified the business problem, they've identified the solution, they don't know how to build that solution, right? And they don't even know how to get started. And so that's something that we spent a lot of time trying to help articulate and communicate, because a lot of folks want to jump right in. And they want to come into our office and say, here's the solution we have, how much does it cost and how long will it take for you to build it? And we say back to them, thank you so much for asking that question. That's a great question. A lot of people come in and ask us that question. Let me ask you some questions. Do you have any technical requirements? And so that's things like a scope of work, right? And they're like, well, no, I don't have that. I just have this one pager where I know what I want it to do. Okay, that's great. Do you have any users personified? Do you have any user profiles or flows identified? Do you have a systems map that shows us all the different pieces of software that need to come together? Have you phased out your features so that you've identified what's the MVP, minimal viable product, what's the smallest thing we can build that'll be successful versus the features of the future that you're going to add in 18 or 24 months when you're really successful? And so they say, oh, well, no, we don't have any of that. And so the first engagement we have with most of our clients isn't building them software. There's no developers typically in the room. The first thing we do is what we call a roadmap session, where we help people to put all that together. It's the plan, it's the project plan that helps them to be successful in building the application that they want to build. So it's like a one-day planning retreat that we do with our customers. And so it's our first engagement, standalone. We spend all day together. We go through a whole wide variety of exercises and then deliver back to them, here's your roadmap, here's your plan, this is how you're going to do it. And then they can take that and then they can work with us and we can build it for them. Or they can take that plan and they can go shop it out and have someone else in town build it for them. That's totally okay. We haven't had that happen yet because people have had such a good experience typically. The second engagement after that is still in this planning phase. Before you jump into a big software project, you really should do a whole lot of planning. The second aspect of that is what we call a clickable prototype. And so a clickable prototype is still before there's code written. We've now gone through the user experience and user interface process of really understanding what is the application supposed to do, and now what does it actually look like. We build screens that are high fidelity that we load into a software called Envision, so people can actually click through and see this is exactly what our software is going to do. The reason we do that up front is that so many of us are so visual, especially when it comes to IT and software. We don't really know what features we want or need, and we can't articulate them until we see it on a screen. Then we see it on a screen and we know what it is that we want to build. After that, that's a standalone engagement. After that, we move to what's called phase 1 development or MVP development. So that's the minimal viable product. We try to get all those features that they want, be really brutal, cut them down to just the essential tasks. And that's usually the first engagement. We build that phase 1 of their product. And after you build phase 1, you deploy it. Then there's some testing and debugging that happens typically. And then the next phase after that is really key, because with software, when you're creating something from nothing, you don't know how people are going to use it. You don't know exactly what the features are that they need. You might have a really good educated guess. You might be able to think about it really clearly. But until you put that in front of people, you don't know how they're going to respond. So the next phase after that is where you apply user feedback from your first group of people who are using your application. And then some more testing and debugging. And then depending on the customer, it could be more maintenance, and that's it. Or it could be more feature additions. And we could be on that cycle kind of in perpetuity. So we've really spent a whole lot of time honing in on what is that process and how do we communicate and manage expectations really early on. I think one of the biggest challenges that I perceive in selling software is that you've got a lot of technical people who are really excited about software and love technology and are great at technology. And then you've got a lot of business people who understand problems and they understand why they need software, but they don't understand how it works. And communicating between those two groups is oftentimes very challenging. And not because either side is bad, it's just an inherent problem that the folks communicate differently. So you really need people who can interpret, and so sometimes these engagements really help us to interpret between the two groups. So the future of Clevyr is really about products and about product development. So right now, 98% of the revenue is from services. So we're eating what we kill every month, every quarter, every year. And so in order to get into more predictable, stable revenue streams, we're going to launch several products over the next 6-12 months. The first one that we're going to launch is called Clevyr Stories, where we're providing augmented reality as a service. And what that means is for individuals who want to incorporate augmented reality into their businesses, we've come up with multiple paths through this one product where you can send us augmented reality markers and content, and then we manage it for you. So if you're not familiar with what augmented reality is, here's a video we took this morning in our office. To go over just terminology for a second, this image right here in the world of augmented reality is what we call the marker. The marker is what your software is looking for, and when it recognizes that, then it kicks off an action. And that action is what we call just in general your content. So it could be a video playing, or it could be, like in this case, a custom animation that one of our designers developed. This scene that we've designed is you scan the image of this flat city, and roads, cars, buildings, balloons pop up from the ground. It's a 3D model, so you move up and down, you get perspective on what all of those different objects are. There's movement, there's planes that are flying and circling around the city, there's cars that are driving around in their own little navigations. So a whole wide variety of examples. We haven't officially launched the product yet, but we have a couple of customers who are already on the system. We either create a white labeled app for them with all this functionality, or they send us their content and we put it within our app. And so it can be the one-stop shop for folks who want to have augmented reality content. Or we can embed this within an existing enterprise application for any companies that already have an app that they're using. So that's a bit of how we sell Clevyr. And Matt's going to finish this off.
They might have questions for a sales guy.
They might have questions for a sales guy.
Yeah. So, do you have any questions?
For the augmented reality, there's several programs right now that can read and decode what's on there. Can somebody have a program that you've written and just use a program that's already available for you to download, or do you have to use the program you guys developed to be able to read your augmented solution?
So markers are still tied directly to the application today. In the future, we're definitely going to see Apple and Google make a play, and Microsoft probably make a play for a unified database so that a marker would exist through every application. But right now, they're definitely tied directly to the application. Yeah.
So what does your sales force look like, and what does prospecting look like for such a unique
It's that guy.
Yeah.
And that girl.
Yeah, so right now there's 3 people on kind of the sales team. Myself, Mackenzie's our sales and marketing coordinator, and then we have our user experience designer on the sales team as well. She does a lot of the front end of engagements. Cold calling and cold prospecting at major enterprises is not the tactic that we use in order to generate new leads. Really the tactic that we use to generate new leads is warm introductions through our existing network and referral network of existing customers, and so or people that we have done business with in the past. So usually key moments when people make major technology decisions like software development partners is usually when someone in senior leadership of the company or in the IT organization changes. And usually when that person changes, then they reevaluate who's working on what, both staff and vendors. And so that's usually a key trigger moment when someone will say, why don't you go talk to this person, they're new and they're looking at things. Oftentimes what will happen is we work with one customer and they used to work at another company, and so we get into our project, we develop enough of a rapport and success with them that they say, you know what, you should really talk to that person. And so we have a pretty active process within our company where we ask for those referrals. So those are the people that we are looking for introductions to, senior IT leaders within large organizations, and oftentimes CEOs of what we would call mid-size organizations, because they're pretty critically involved in those decisions as well. And then we get a whole lot of inbound traffic. And a key part of our sales process, probably the most important part of our sales process, is qualifying and disqualifying prospects early. So that first phone call, we've we've honed in on how to identify if someone is really going to be a good fit for us or not. In the world of custom software development is not inexpensive, right? It is a large endeavor, and it's a complicated endeavor. And so if you freak out at the idea of a roadmap session, our starter engagement, and it's $3,750, and you can't imagine paying for that when you're getting 40 hours of our time, it's a loss leader for us, then it's not going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
So between 2009 and 2012, tell me about the biggest or the hardest lesson you learned.
Wow. So in those early days, it was literally get a contract, write checks to the 3 partners, pay ourselves. I would do everything, all of the kind of the business analysis after the sales call, hand it over to my partners, Jason and Tim, and say, good luck. And I'd go back out, right? Like it was just, I was fishing every day, that kind of stuff. And we had a couple of clients early on who were massive, and we should have scaled with them for them. And instead, we artificially suppressed Clevyr because it was 3 guys, 3 friends, hanging out at the Red Cup upstairs, massive amounts of coffee, staying late. Angel would bring the kids to see us for dinner, that type of stuff. And for me, the biggest takeaway for that time period was really, we should have just said, okay, let's do this the normal way. Let's go get funding. Let's go build this thing right away. Let's go hire up everybody that we know. And instead, we didn't do that until I think it's the largest privately owned company. Are they the largest? Third largest privately owned company in America found us. I'll tell you that when they called and said they want a meeting with me, I went and got every Coke product on the planet because I thought it was Coke. It's wrong Coke. Wow. Right? So they come in and we're in this little tiny, like shitty little office, like dark as hell, because we were in there watching Star Wars and writing code, right? That's what we did. Yeah. And this great lady, she's a mentor to me now. She's sitting there and I gave her like 2 or 3 Coke products and she went, oh my God, you don't know who I am. And I went, you're not with Coke? And she goes, yeah, spell it this way. And I was like, oh, that makes total sense. So, we, in 2014, Gary Nelson, my mentor, we had coffee one day and we were just talking about 5-year plans, that type of stuff. And he said, you've got to hire a salesperson. You have no methodologies around sales. And I went, ugh, like, it's gross. Because I've never been a sales guy. I was the guy who, when the sales guy walked in, he said, here's what we're going to do. And I went, no, asshole, that's not what we do. Because he'd sold a new contract, it was to do X, and that's not what we built for all those places I was at. But it was, right? Because he got the contract, and that meant the light stayed on, and it meant we employed hundreds of people, and that's what we did. And I didn't understand that for a long time. Like, his ego's good enough, but we went through a lot of people before we found him and hired him. And what he did day one was instill methodologies. And he still yells at me when I paint birds in people's pictures all the time. Someone's describing what they need, and I go, oh, what we should do is, and I get science fiction with them, and I start talking about what we could do in 6 months or 8 months or a year of just let me have my team of 25 kill it for you. And that's not realistic. We need to fix their problem, whatever that problem is. That was a really long not answer, but.
How did you guys find each other?
Fate. I like it when you tell this story.
I had started, so I spent 6 years previous to getting into the software world working for nonprofit organizations, leading fundraising. And so I had left a really good nonprofit fundraising job to go with a buddy and help him with his software consulting startup. And so I did that with him for about 5 months. We had some really good success in some ways. There were some challenges that weren't going to be resolved, and so I decided to leave. And so early on, working with my friend, we had a meeting with Matt to just network and discuss, and we had a good rapport during that conversation. And he had reached out to me and said, hey, I'm not going to poach you, but if you're ever not working for Ryan, come talk to me. And so there was a time where I thought, okay, maybe I won't be working there anymore. And so we got back together and met with the team. And
I have a habit of when I meet somebody, even if they work for Google, and I know that I want them, I'll just say, look, someday you're not going to want to do that thing. Let me know first. I mean, maybe I can't meet whatever that is, but give me a chance. And I hate seeing people leave OKC. It just makes me crazy when I know talent walks out the door to go somewhere else. So, yeah. What else?
On those lines, what are some things that we can do as a community to promote the tech industry and obviously what you guys do here and grow that side?
Matt, if you repeat that so we catch it on the recording, that'd be great.
Yeah, so Brian's asking what OKC and Oklahoma in general, I think, could do to promote technology. And I personally think it's really more about just turning these cities into livable places for people of all ages and nationalities and whatever. Because, like, for instance, there's a thing right now in Oklahoma City all about bikeable streets, right? Well, our streets aren't bikeable. We all know that. We need to make them bikeable in certain places. And it's people like, am I going to be able to poach someone out of Portland, Oregon, if they come here and they look at this and they go, God, I can't ride to work. I can't do that. And, you know, even if you live 6 miles away in Portland, you can ride to work, no worries. You live 6 miles away in Oklahoma City, you're never going to bike to work. You're not going to happen. So there's just a whole lot of growing up our city needs to do. But the schools have finally kind of caught on, I think, the major universities, and they're teaching and training people in smarter, better ways. And we've worked for 10 years with different colleges just saying, man, if you would do this in your courses, I'd hire these people. And it feels like it's just starting to happen. I'm a huge fan of Amy Cataldi. She's one of the deans up at OCU, and she is amazing. I'm in love with what they're doing over there.
Other questions? We got a few more minutes for questions, and now's your shot.
So with that, with education and, you know, obviously the augmented reality, if somebody hasn't seen that, if you guys haven't seen that, go and see Mike's demonstration because you want to see it. You want to be somebody who's seen it, knows what it is. But for colleges and whatever, creating something that's just kind of fun for them. Do they have in their advertising department something that's in a budget place that would fit that? You guys did have this conversation?
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, so the folks that we're talking to, so they've got marketing dollars related to admissions, where, you know, every new student, right, that's a line item of revenue for them. And so things like augmented reality acceptance letters, where you get a video from the university president or department head or something like that, where not only does it say congratulations, welcome, you scan the letter and it actually has them say that to you. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about with folks. And so it's usually the marketing budget that we're working with for folks in AR in particular.
So that's like a really sharp image of Princess Leia popping up
Right.
on the card, and they can see it in 3D and move it all around.
And wouldn't you want to go to that university if Princess Leia says you're my only hope?
Actually, build on your question here. Dig a little bit deeper in. So what, the infrastructure, that's really cool to hear about. What other things, like a Silicon Valley, what makes that place special? Just, is that their Woodstock and that's where people of that brilliant mind go? Or
Yeah.
what makes that area, or Austin, you hear about that having a,
Yeah.
what makes those places unique that people of tech go there?
Money, for one thing. They understand how to bring capital in and keep it. And Oklahoma has done a great job of understanding capital in other industries, right? Like, we're in this great building. We've not done a good job yet of understanding how to keep capital home. But also, like in 95, I went to my first conference in San Jose, and I remember standing in 7-Eleven to get a drink of something, not Dr. Pepper because they're bastards, but I looked down and there was RAM, like computer RAM, on the end aisle at a 7-Eleven, and I thought, this is Mecca. I mean, I can come here and buy RAM at 7-Eleven? It just blew my mind, you know. They thought about it differently from day one.
I would probably add on to that there's, in many ways, a pretty healthy and growing tech ecosystem, and really a tech and startup ecosystem. And there's a study that was commissioned year and a half ago related to our tech and startup ecosystem. And the number one thing that they identified that our peer in terms of size in potentially similar cities that we lacked that other cities had was access to early stage capital and funding. And so when we say early stage capital and funding, that means things like seed funding, brand new pre-revenue ideas, right? And they track that in a couple different ways: the number of deals, the amount of time it takes to get that capital, and then the. And if the city our size had a baseline score average of 8, Oklahoma City, when they did that study, was like a 2, right? And so we're pretty far behind. So there's a lot of groups that are getting together trying to find ways to get more early stage funding into the startup sector, because it's really a game of swinging for home runs. The folks who are in this game, and so that you're going to have 20 swings. You might get 3 at bat. And then you might get 1 double, and then you might get 1 home run. And so that's the kind of game and understanding and capital sophistication. There's lots of folks who can invest in real estate. There's lots of folks investing in oil and gas. So there's lots of capital. It's just not coming into these kinds of deals because they're so risky compared to what folks are used to. So it's a big challenge to overcome.
Matt, what's the hardest part of running and growing your business now?
Wow. Space today. I could probably make 10 hires today if I wanted to. There's people who call us every week and say, I'm going to come to work for Clevyr. We've literally had interviews where the people walked in and said, I'm starting today. And okay, we'll have an interview and we'll see what happens. And if they're like I hope they are, then we hire them. But we're in the process of expanding or moving soon. And really for what we do, there's no end to what we can do for the clients. So that's not the hard part. The hard part is just growing. You're helping though, so thanks.
So as you guys shift or add the products from the custom software development to products, number one, do you think is that something where you may leave the custom software development?
Mm-mm.
And then number two, what changes do you foresee that shift requiring in sales, marketing, and even organization of the business?
I'll let him talk about sales and marketing, but internally it is a different mindset to work on the same product day in and day out, right? And while we have clients that we've worked for 7 years, and so we have basically productized internally for them the applications we've built, it is a different type of, we tend to hire people who like spreading themselves thin, right? They want to be in 3 different projects. They want to try to learn this new thing. We have a really amazing internal practice for AI, machine learning. So moving those people around and keeping them fresh is really important for them. And as we move into those productized platforms, we will build tribes devoted to that thing. And that is it's a different animal.
On the sales and marketing front, it's really the existing sales and marketing team that will start the process of selling new products and services. And then we have kind of our metrics figured out on, at this revenue, we're adding this salesperson or this dev or that kind of stuff. We don't yet have those metrics figured out but we know that what we're going to be doing is figuring out how much monthly recurring revenue do we need to have from products to justify each salesperson going forward. So we have a couple kind of marketing launch events that we're doing for Clevyr Stories in the month of June. So a conference where we're going to be setting up a booth and then pitching, and then the American Marketing Association lunch in June. I'm going to go and speak on using augmented reality for marketing, and then talk about Clevyr Stories. And so we're gonna see what that early customer feedback is from using before we develop too many marketing materials, because we don't want to try to sell the wrong message. So we think we've got the message figured out, but kind of like using an agile software development methodology, you really want to get as much customer feedback as early as possible before you say this is what we're doing.
So time for 1 or 2 more questions.
That back table doesn't ask anything. That's weird. I mean, you know.
Right.
This is Mike for you. You talked earlier about having a long sales cycle and an expensive product, which can be difficult to go through the process. You mentioned qualifying a prospect is key for you. Is there other parts during that cycle from a strategic standpoint that you found to be very successful, or things that you've done that haven't worked?
Yeah. So, great question. So the question is, long sales cycle challenges are, qualifying is really important. Are there other parts where we're especially successful or where we haven't been? And I would say absolutely. And that transition, if we go on the user journey map.
Oh, yeah.
One more.
Back.
So that transition, so like when we started off, we started working on this, 16, 17 months ago, we didn't have this user journey kind of articulated in the way we do right now. So we just said someone would give us the requirements and it would be kind of enough information and then we would get going, right? That didn't work really well because I was a subject matter expert early on. I had all the information about the project and then the developers were trying to catch up to me at all times, right? So that transition from talking to the sales guy, all the feel goods that I'm giving them as a sales guy, to now you got to go work with some developers, right? That was a pretty hard transition. So
Have you met developers? We're weird.
So we figured out, okay, we need a starter engagement so that we can introduce them to not just me, but to other members of the team, and we can get more information up front that we need to be successful in that development, right? And so then we did this, and we got refined it, and so we started this process, 12, 13 months ago, and we've done about 25 of these roadmap sessions in that time. And what we figured out is really refined this process down. But we were handing off from roadmap to phase 1, right? Which for some people is okay, but for a lot of people is not okay. They needed another intermediary transition step between, now I've got a plan, now I'm going to go do development. And so we figured out that we really need this step here where now they're visually seeing, we've written out for them all the stuff we're going to build and how we're going to build it and when we're going to build it, but they really need to visually see it too. And so this is sales, user experience, a little bit of developer kind of introduction, but not very much. This is user experience, user interface designer, and we're throwing in a developer to these meetings too, because now they're watching that clickable prototype and they're converting all those things to features and confirming what's on that roadmap, right? So it's slowly making more introductions and strategic introductions and handoffs of relationship. That's been really critical.
Yeah, that's literally scaling Clevyr. Because it used to just be me and having that relationship with the client, putting it on a piece of paper or a whiteboard and getting buy-off from my partners, my CTO and the front-end guy, this product officer. But you can't scale like that. So methodologies are coming in place that allow us to do that.
Yeah. On top of that, obviously, having that in place has helped the company. Since you introduced roadmap and some of those other processes, how has that affected client satisfaction?
I think it's huge. Yeah, we have we've grown a lot and we've added a lot of clients, but we've also instilled some of these methods back into the clients we've had for years, and they're very receptive. They're very happy.
Can we give Matt a round of appreciation and Mike as well?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. And for every one of our speakers, we always like to give them a little token of our appreciation.
Oh,
so there's
you.
something to put on your desk. I think you still have a desk. I don't know that for sure.
I sort of do.
Yeah. Sort of do. So, if you've got questions that you want to ask him or things that you want to probe into, I'm sure he's happy to answer some of those. I don't know if he's got to race off right away.
No, we're good.
So he'll stick around and answer questions for a little while if you've got them. So again, you do not have to race out of here, but our commitment is always to make sure that we're done by 1. So if you want to stick around and visit with each other or with Matt or Mike or whoever that is, you're very welcome to do that. Our meetings like this are always the 3rd Wednesday of every month. If you fast forward into the month of June, our speaker is a lady by the name of Alicia Gardner. She's the CEO of a company here in town called Easy Time Clock, which they've got a very unique business. They've done some amazing things. They've got clients all across the United States. and I think even outside the United States today. So kind of a cool business that you might not even know exists. And I always enjoy these because even though sometimes there's a business you've heard of, you probably haven't heard some of the things in the story. And what I encourage you to do is think about, is there one or two things you can take and put into your business and maybe get some value out of this way. So again, our lunches are always the third Wednesday. If you are not following us on the different social channels that you're plugged into, we'd love to have you do that. If you enjoy this, you're always welcome to come back. If you want to visit about membership and what that looks like, any of us with the green name tags are happy to visit with you about that. Again, you don't have to race out of here. If you want to visit with each other or with myself or with Matt or Mike, happy to do that. But if you need to leave, that's okay too. So can we give Matt one more quick round of applause?